Maria Meningini Callas. Do you remember her here with the lyric opera? And here she is, a tall woman with reddish-brown hair, very large eyes, and rather nearsighted eyes, too. A slim woman, born in New York City. In 2.5 weeks, she'll be 34. Her name, Maria Anna Sophia Cecilia, and I've never been able to pronounce the last name. Would you do it for me?
In Greek?
In Greek?
Yes. You ready?
Yes.
Kalogeropoulou. Well, it's rather long.
And that's why your father, who's a pharmacist, changed it to Callas.
Yes, I'm afraid so. It was already done by the time I understood any difference.
You went to school, I know, in New York at Public School 164, and you began to sing at the age of 8. And you knew poverty, too, I know, in New York after the 1929 crash, and famine and cold and bombs in Greece in World War II.
Yes.
All this
May
is
I
behind
say
you
one
now.
thing, Norman?
Yes, Maria.
Poverty is not really the word, because I can't say I really suffered poverty. I wasn't a rich girl. In fact, I wasn't even very well off. Wasn't well off. But there's quite a difference between poverty and living in the best manner my father could have. In fact, I really didn't suffer poverty. Poverty in Greece, yes, and it wasn't anybody's fault but the war. In fact, really, I suffered hunger.
There are those who say that you weren't going to show up here tonight in Chicago because you didn't honor your contracts. That's not true, is it?
No, it's not true. In fact, I defy anyone to say that I gave up a contract of mine just for the love of giving up contracts.
Even in San Francisco?
Even in San Francisco. Anyone in good faith knows I was sick. I was before, and I also had the Asian flu on top of that, so that was no pleasure either.
I understand they're going to try to keep you from singing at the Met.
Yes, that's the unfortunate part of it, and I haven't quite understood why, Norman. I wish you could answer my question. Why has all this come out? I am known as a person, especially in Chicago, has always kept her word. Contracts are just a matter of having to sign a contract, but once I say I come, I come. Remember last year, I came to this concert in January. I'll always remember it, and I hope the Chicago public also will. I wasn't supposed to come because my lawsuit was postponed, so I could have very well postponed this one because Mrs. Kirk, that was the sponsor of it for this Hungarian and Alliance Française relief, was very willing to. And then I said no. In the first place, I wished to come to Chicago. Second place, I promised I would, and I will. Here I am also here, even in this brief interview.
And you came in spite of the fact that your airplane was about 3 hours late and it was a very rough trip. We were scared to death. Yes, it was
rather a trip. It was a rough trip.
May I get to your very early days as a young girl in New York? You never went very far in school, not beyond grade school. Why was that?
Well, that was because we left for Greece in 1937, so I had just gone into high school. So I went to Greece, and I couldn't continue school there because my mother decided on my singing career.
Your mother drove you very hard as a singer, didn't she?
Yes. I may be thankful for one thing, and I may not be thankful for another thing. Well, go ahead.
Do you think that if you have a daughter, I'm just wondering about this, if you have a daughter who has great talent as a singer, would you force her to practice at a very early age?
No, decidedly no. It's cruelty, I think. In fact, please forgive me. It may sound very cruel also on my behalf, but I must say there must be a law against it because a child must never be given extra responsibility. Now, the enfant prodige can give wonderfully up to a certain age. Sometimes they keep on going, but they just can't stand it because of nervous breakdowns. I don't blame them. I'm amazed I haven't. I was on the verge of it about 2 or 3 months ago when I gave up San Francisco. I was run down. I was tired. That can happen to anyone, especially to me that works rather hard, and each performance is always a proof of what I am, or at least much more than what I'm supposed to be. And I ask a lot of myself also, and I give. And I'm happy too. But children should not be given this responsibility. They don't last long. Children should have a wonderful childhood. I have not had it. I wish I could have.
There was a statement that you would not forgive your mother because she had taken your childhood from you. Now, that was in Time magazine, I think.
Well, yes, but you see, when you see something written in a few words, everything becomes harsher. I wish Time magazine had found a way to say things nicer instead of just condensing words into 3 or 4 phrases, into 3 or rather sentences, into 3 or 4 words. Then everything becomes harsh and cruel. I had said that I was terribly sorry, and I really couldn't forgive her for having taken this childhood away. Now, saying it and writing it in this way is quite a difference.
Yes. You know, before we came over this evening, we were talking about something I think nobody knows about, and that is that you sang on the radio here as a little girl before you went to Athens. Who was the MC on that program?
Well, now, the MC was Jack Benny, imagine. And then there were quite a few of us enfants prodige, shall I say. I didn't win the first prize.
You didn't win the first prize?
Oddly enough. I remember only Jack Benny was so terribly disappointed. He just couldn't believe it. There was a jury of enfants prodige, you know, very famous children at that time. I don't remember who they were, but it was, I suppose, 1936 or 5 or 6, something like that.
Remember what you won?
I won a Boulevard wristwatch. And the one that won first prize, I would be most curious to know what had happened to this boy. He was an accordion player. Imagine. Sad.
There's so many things I'd like to ask you about your experiences over in Greece. Maria, I know that you made your debut in Athens at the age of 14, and you said in those articles in Oji, and we're very proud that we had those translated because I don't think that any of this material has appeared in the United States before.
I don't think so.
You said, I was in despair, for my face was swollen and misshapen with a terrible toothache. It's always been like this at every important moment of my career. I've had to pay unfailingly and immediately for my triumphs with a personal displeasure or a physical malady. Why do you suppose that is the case?
I don't know. I wish I could explain it, but it happens all the time. And I was hoping that becoming and reaching a certain point of my career that everything would go so fine, calmly, and I'd really be able to dedicate my half my life to my husband. Unfortunately, half I say because I sing. I'd like to dedicate all my life to my husband. And to art, which is really so great that it frightens me sometimes. That's what eats my heart out, and that's what keeps my weight down, I suppose.
I'd like to ask a little something about your weight, if I may. Now, I saw you.
Here we go again.
Well, I happen to have been one of those who saw you before and after. You know those before and after?
No, I didn't know that, Norman. When?
I saw you in London, in Norma, in 1962. There's quite a difference from 202, if I may say so, down to 135 pounds. We have thousands of ladies listening who'd like to know, how did you do it?
Well, I must say one thing, Norman. The truth is that I wasn't feeling well then. There was something wrong with me, I must say. Though doctors say I had gone to visit doctors, and they had said, well, you know, your singers are always crazy, so there's something wrong with you anyway. So I said, sure, fine, all right, so I'm crazy, so cure me. Oh, no, he said, I wouldn't think of touching you. You'd lose your voice because, you know, this abnormality, it depends, your voice depends on it. All nonsense, of course. Because I wasn't born fat. In fact, my family, my father, I don't know whether you've met oh, yes, you have met my father. Right. So he's been here in Chicago. And he's as thin and as tall as I am, taller, of course. So it is in the family by my not being fat. But I had something that had gone wrong. All of a sudden, I found out what it was, and I'm ashamed to say it on television. And, well, I cured it. And by and by, in 2 years' time, I just finally managed to lose weight. Of course, helping it by a little dieting. Now, I don't mean not eating, but choosing the right food. Non-calorie macaroni, was that part of it? Well, no, dear, I won the case. No, because they even accused me of that. I mean, they profited by some publicity. My family, not my personal family, not part of the family, saying that I had lost weight on non-calorie macaroni. That's ridiculous. I just watched drinking, that is water, and of course you eat broiled food, broiled chicken, beef, and, you know, fish, lots of salad, lots of fruit, oil, of course, that's all. But it was my time to grow thin. I mean, really, when one sees me now, you could, if you hadn't seen me then, you could never imagine me fat, could you? That's right. No, not at all. And in fact, now I'm really feeling well. Then I wasn't. That I'd like quite plain. Yes.
Let me get back, if I can, to Athens, and this has something to do with food, too. Because when you sang for the Italian and the German soldiers, how did they pay you?
Well, they couldn't pay you in money, or rather, I had asked for food, because no matter how much money they gave you could never find food in the market, or rather, black market where no money was enough. So I had asked, instead of money, any kind, rice, milk, macaroni, meat. And that, I remember, after a year's practic starvation on tomato without oil or anything, I don't know how I really feel well or live up to this point. And I finally had my first rice and spaghetti and meat.
Did Greek people themselves ever, at risk to themselves, help you by giving you food so you could go on singing?
Yes, they did. I remember, because, it was very dangerous. Everything was taken over by the Germans, and it was very dangerous to give any food out. And yet, because I was singing at the opera at that time, they deprived themselves of this meat and other things. I don't remember now what could have been. They deprived themselves to give me this food so that I could keep on going, because I was rather young then, you know.
You learned Italian while you were there in Greece and during the war. Now, weren't there Greek people who resented your learning Italian?
They didn't know it. Because, you see, there was one thing. I could have learned Italian, but I had to go to the fascist school. And that I couldn't do, because then I would really be branded. So I decided on, that is, my teacher, De Hidalgo, told me, you've got to learn Italian. In other words, it's ridiculous that you just sing without understanding what you're saying, which is the most important thing, and I do appreciate that because it's true. So I said, well, all right, I will, but I can't go to this school because I can't risk being accused. And I had two friends that had studied in Italy. One was an Italian, half Greek. And I just started talking with them, and I had them say the verbs to me, all by ear. And after 2 months, I managed to speak Italian. I'm amazed to think of it now. I'm afraid I couldn't do it now.
No, I know that you learned an entire Bellini opera during a week when you were also singing 3 Brunhildes, so I think you could do anything. 5 days.
5 days with 3 Brunhildes in the meantime.
Fantastical. Do you like to sing?
Well, I used to. I'm afraid I don't now because it scares me so. You see, Norman, music, singing isn't only vocal display. It's serving music. We are the first instrument of the orchestra. It's the whole orchestra, and the voices are the solo of this orchestra. In fact, as you've noticed in these Bellini, Donizetti, Rossini operas, also in Verdi, the melody is always played before by the instrument, by other instruments. Sometimes it's the violin, sometimes the oboe. It depends. But we're supposed to imitate them. Now, it's very difficult because we're only humans. And we deal with weather, we deal with goodness knows what. You never know sometimes explanations to why you don't feel well, or you do feel well. Sometimes you're really ill, and you sing beautifully. That frightens me because you never know with singing. And also art is so great. And the more you do music, the more you serve music, the more you realize that you do very little for music.
Do you think you have the most beautiful musical voice in the world?
I don't know what you mean by that musical voice.
Well, do you think your voice is, for pure beauty, as pleasant to hear as the voice of Renata Tebaldi, for example?
Well, you see, there's one thing. I can hear Renata Tebaldi, and I cannot hear my voice. Mm-hmm. That's different. I admire Renata Tebaldi's tone. It's beautiful. Also, some beautiful phrasing. I have admired it. Sometimes I must say that I wish I had her voice, because I don't know what kind of a voice I have. You hear my voice as I don't hear it. So I can't judge.
Why do you think it is that you go to her performances to see her sing and she refuses to come to yours?
I wish you'd ask her that.
I'd like to.
Maybe I'd find out why then. You see, I'm unhappy about that situation also because I'm not ashamed to say that I love to assist performances, especially to performances of my colleagues, certain colleagues that I admire as I do Tebaldi. And I have gone there especially to learn, because I'm not ashamed to say there is always to learn, not only from Tebaldi, but even from the bit part player. I cannot do it now anymore, because even there I am accused of trying to unnerve my colleagues, and that is most unhappy, and I have to give it up.
Didn't you suggest in the first place to Carol Fox and Lawrence Kelly that they hire Tebaldi and bring her to Chicago?
I most certainly did, because you see, one season, what I'm most interested is in founding an opera season. An opera season can never be a healthy one if it's always depending on one soprano or one tenor, because either one may be capricious or may be also. You can't depend on one because either he may not feel well, something may happen, he may not come, and for the health of the opera season, you cannot depend on one. And I also admire her. She does not need either my admiration or my recommendation, that is sure. But, as you know, Carol Fox and Lawrence Kelly loved me so much they wouldn't dream of doing something that I wouldn't want or I would dislike. So they didn't dare tell me, and I told them that I will do this opera, and I feel that you must bring Tebaldi. So they just jumped to it, and they said, we wouldn't dream of you thinking a thing like that. I said, no, I'm sorry, I do, because she should be here, and we both should keep up the season. And, in fact, I'm happy to see that though I wasn't here for 2 seasons, she took up and kept up.
We understand that she will not be back with us again next year. Does that mean that she's going to go to La Scala?
It's the first time I hear about it.
That's what we heard today. Does that mean she'll go to La Scala and challenge you? Were you the undisputed queen, do you think?
I don't know what you mean by undisputed queen, and I don't know what you mean by challenge me. How can she challenge me? Why should she challenge me?
You see, I think that what's happened is that the press has built up a feud between you and other artists. Do you think the press is responsible for doing that?
I don't think the press is responsible.
Who else could be?
I'm quite sure it's my cow, because things do not come out by themselves. If someone doesn't tell the press just doesn't imagine things, usually.
Yes.
Sometimes they can invent, but this is a bit too much of, it's a bit too evident. Now, you said Tebaldi challenging me. How can she challenge me? Can she sing the operas I sing?
No.
So, may I say another thing? Rivalry. We have no such thing between us, because, in fact, I have no, thank God, forgive me, I have no rival now, because up to the moment that another soprano will do exactly what I do, the repertoire I do, my repertoire is very vast. Lots of operas and very different operas. The way I act, the way I am, and everything is quite different from my colleagues, though I admire them enormously. I don't know whether they admire me. I don't know whether they hate me. If they do, I'm sorry, but I don't recommend it because it's bad for their health. It's a nasty living. Forgive my saying so, but it really is. So, up to the point that these so-called rivals of mine, without being disrespectful, until they do exactly what I do, then I will consider them my rivals. By this, I don't want to say, Norman, I want this clear. I admire, for instance, Tebaldi enormously. I hope she understands it, realizes it, and believes it. I have no need to say these things because she doesn't interest me at all. The only thing that interests me is my husband, first of all, my health, second of all, of course, and myself. My very dear friends, few of them, I don't know how many I have, because you will only know that when you really are in need of friends. And I hope I never really have need of friends. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then my art. So I really don't have to say these things. Only I want to, for her own sake, for her own peace of mind, and for all my colleagues that do not like me or that go at me in any way. I wish they just wouldn't bother about me. It would be more helpful for them, and it would be so much nicer and more comfortable for me, because I'm being accused of the most ridiculous things.
I'm going to ask you about one of those in just a moment, and that is, did you kick Mario Del Monaco in the shins?
Can you imagine the picture of measly little me kicking a great big man like Mario Del Monaco in the shins, and he being so pain-stricken that he couldn't even get the curtain call? You can imagine a tenor that would miss a curtain call. I still have to see him. In fact, in my memoir at the Oggi, I spoke about that, and I didn't have any answer, which is proof of such nonsense. In fact, I must say one thing. Chicago has proof of how I've acted.
Well, now, will you come back to sing for Carol Fox the lyric opera?
Well, when I have an offer, I will consider it, but I haven't had one yet.
Do we have a chance to hear you sing in concert again?
Yes, Norman. I've made a point of accepting it because I do love Chicago, and I hope Chicago still loves me. And I accepted the same concert that I did last year, remember, for the Alliance Française, and last year it was for the Hungarian Relief. I don't know what it will be exactly because I haven't seen Mrs. Kirk yet.
This is very good news for us, and I think something
And
is
I hope you'll still want me here in Chicago anyway.
Everyone will want to hear you sing in Chicago.
Thank you, Norman.
You know, to me, one of the most impressive parts of that whole Audrey series was the ending, and I'd like very much to read it and to share it. You've been a woman who has had a great deal of controversy directed against you. You're a woman of great temperament, and I say that in the best sense of the term temperament, and I think this ending is very interesting. My story is over, you said. I've been sincere, perhaps too much so. I know my enemies await me, as in a mountain pass, but I shall struggle as is humanly possible never to delude my public, which I love, and whose esteem and admiration I do not want to lose. Watch out, Maria, Eugenio Gava, my dearest friend and illustrious critic, has often told me. Remember the Chinese proverb that says, who rides atop the tiger can never get down. No, dear Eugenio, have no fear. I shall never alight from the tiger, and indeed I believe you won't.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm sorry we haven't got any time. Now they gave me 2 tigers, you know. So I'm 1 foot here and 1 foot there, which makes things worse for me.
I wish you luck and Godspeed.
Thank you, Norman.
And thank you for coming all the way from Dallas just to be with us tonight.
It was my happiness just at least to say a brief hello to Chicago, where I have left a whole lot of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Callas.